a cold, scripted message that hovered above every major city on Earth, projected in the sky by orbiting alien relays, translated into every language, and signed with the seal of the Galactic High Council. No discussion, no negotiation, just a statement. Submit or suffer annihilation. For 5 full minutes, the skies glowed with that threat. People screamed, cities froze, satellites blinked offline, planes dropped from the sky. The world held its breath, and in that moment, everything changed. Commander Holt Maddox had been watching from the upper deck of the HAS Resolute, Earth's first and only space battle carrier, a still experimental warship built from desperation, not dominance. Holt wasn't a man who dealt well with ultimatums, especially not ones that came from smug alien bureaucrats sitting in golden thrones, light years away, dictating Earth's fate, like Earth was some backwater farm they could buy and burn. He had lost his father during the First Contact massacre, one of the first men to stand between an alien scout raid and a civilian evacuation. He still remembered the report. Non-compliant. That was the word the aliens used for those who dared to resist. Like humanity was a problem to be corrected. Like resistance was a bug in the system. Not this time. The president's emergency broadcast flickered onto every screen an hour after the warning. His voice cracked. His hands trembled. He didn't even look into the camera. We are considering our options. Pathetic. Holt didn't wait. He gathered the strike captains, rallied the Orbital Defense Corps, and sent one message back through the same channel the Council had used. If you want Earth, come take it. Otherwise, go fight yourselves. It was simple. Director. No hesitation. And once it aired, it was too late to walk it back. That message lit a fuse that had been building for decades. It wasn't just Holt. People were tired of crawling, begging, pretending humanity was too weak to fight back. The moment the message hit, cities erupted, not in fear, but in defiance. Factories powered back up. Mines started producing again. Draft lists filled within hours. They wanted war. Earth would give them hell. A day later, Holt was in orbit, staring down a Council recon ship that had just warped in from deep space. It was sleek, sterile, and arrogant, a diplomatic vessel with enough firepower to vaporize New York. It hovered over the Atlantic like it owned the sky, and it transmitted a single, smug reply. You have made your choice. May your species rest in memory. Holt stood at the front of the Resolute's bridge. No smile, no nerves, just cold fury. He gave the order to target the ship. His weapons officer hesitated. Sir, firing on a Council vessel is what they're not expecting. Holt cut in. They think we'll flinch. Let's show 'em what happens when they try to bully the wrong species. The first missile screamed out of the Resolute's bay. The Council ship tried to react, shields shimmering, weapons charging. But Earth had been building in secret. That warhead wasn't standard. It carried a pulse bomb, custom-built from salvaged alien tech and raw human spite. The detonation didn't just destroy the ship. It tore a hole through subspace so violent it echoed across 3 sectors. And just like that, Earth wasn't just rebellious anymore. Earth was at war with the entire galactic order. And Holt Maddox had just made himself the most wanted man in the universe. The fallout hit faster than anyone expected. The moment the Council recon ship disintegrated above the Atlantic, every sensor and surveillance grid across the solar system lit up. Civilian news anchors tried to spin it. Earth defends itself after alien provocation. But Holt didn't care about PR. This wasn't about optics. This was survival. Back on the Resolute, alarms screamed as dozens of unidentified warp signatures flared to life at the edge of the Kuiper Belt. Council reinforcements? They weren't coming to negotiate. They were coming to make an example. 73 ships, sir, called Lieutenant Marek, voice tight. Cruisers, corvettes, and 3 dreadnoughts. All Council flagged. Estimated time to orbital range. 9 hours. Holt didn't flinch. He leaned over the tactical display, watching the swarm like a hunter watching wolves circle the fire. He'd known this was coming the moment he pulled the trigger. He didn't regret it. Regret was for politicians and cowards. His only concern now was how to make those bastards bleed. "Tell Command we need every bird in the air and every cannon online," he said. "We hold the line at Luna. If they breach Earth's orbit, it's over." The tension on the bridge was ice-thin. Half the crew were volunteers, barely trained. Some had never seen live fire. But Holt wasn't there to comfort them. He wasn't their father or their therapist. He was their commander. And Earth didn't have the luxury of coddling anymore. Hours passed. Final preparations made. Luna's defense grid flickered online, a Frankenstein patchwork of salvaged alien parts, human ingenuity, and raw defiance. Orbital cannons rotated into firing position. Strike drones scrambled from the moon's surface. The Resolute took point, engines humming like a growling beast waiting to be unleashed. And then they came. The Council fleet emerged from subspace in tight formation. Black hulls, glowing insignias, smooth like polished bone. There was no attempt at diplomacy, no warning shot, just a wall of firepower descending on Earth like God's raining judgment. The first volley hit Luna's outer defense satellites. Sparks flared, steel twisted. But Earth didn't crumble. Holt's voice roared through the comms. "Return fire! Give 'em hell!" The Resolute's railguns sang, followed by missile trails and laser beams carving through vacuum. Earth's ships weren't sleek, they weren't elegant, but they were brutal, dirty, relentless. They fought like humans, unpredictable, emotional, desperate. The Council hadn't prepared for that. 3 enemy corvettes were shredded in the first 5 minutes. One dreadnought took a direct plasma hit and began to list, fires spilling from its side like it was bleeding oil. Still, the enemy pushed forward, methodical and overwhelming. Holt knew they couldn't hold forever. "Activate the Hades Protocol," he ordered. Marek turned to him, eyes wide. "That's not even fully tested. We don't know what it'll... We don't need it tested. We need it unleashed." The Hades Protocol was Earth's dirtiest card, a forbidden fusion of alien tech and dark energy research, scraped together from black site labs nobody was supposed to know existed. It wasn't a weapon. It was a gamble. A curse. But it was all they had. A deep rumble echoed through the Resolute. Lights flickered. Gravity warped. For a second, every crew member felt like their bones were vibrating, and then a black pulse exploded from the ship's core, invisible to the eye, but devastating to any ship running Council-grade neural AI systems. Enemy vessels began to veer, glitch, convulse. Their systems scrambled. Shields died. Crews panicked. Holt watched them flail like eels in oil, and he smiled. "You wanted war," he muttered. "You got one." It wasn't a clean fight. Earth lost dozens of ships. Luna's surface was scorched in places. But the Council had underestimated something fundamental. Humans weren't fighting for territory. They were fighting because they'd been told to kneel, and they would burn the sky before they bowed. By the time the Council fleet retreated, dragging its wounded behind, Earth had held. Barely. But enough. Holt stood on the Resolute's bridge, bruised, blooded, eyes dark with exhaustion. Around him, the crew cheered, celebrated. But he didn't. He looked out into the void and whispered to himself, "This was the first wave. The real war hasn't even started." He was right, because the Council wouldn't forgive this. And now they'd send something worse than a fleet. They'd send a message. And Earth would have to answer it with more than just firepower. They'd need monsters. The Council didn't take defeat lightly. They called it an incident in their public broadcasts, claimed a rogue fleet had been lost due to system failure while investigating unauthorized Earth aggression. But Holt knew better. Behind those calm, rehearsed faces and ceremonial robes, the Council was seething. Earth had humiliated them. And empires don't let humiliation go unpunished. For the next few days, Earth waited in uneasy silence. No new fleets arrived, no communications, no ultimatums. But everyone felt it, like the air before a thunderstorm. Holt barely slept. The crew rotated through emergency drills. Cities back on Earth went underground. Nations stopped bickering and started preparing. But it was the message that came on day 6 that told Holt the storm had finally broken. It didn't come through a council relay. It came as a private transmission, hacked into Earth's emergency defense grid like a knife in the back. There was no voice, no face, just an image. A battlefield. Bodies, human bodies, impaled, burned, shredded, limbs nailed to trees, skulls crushed under council boots, a massacre somewhere off-world, and scrawled in blood across a ruined wall, "Is this the freedom you wanted?" Bastards had found one of the outer colonies, and they'd made an example of it. Holt clenched his jaw, staring at the flickering screen. He knew the colony. Vernus 7, a terraformed mining outpost about 3 jumps beyond Mars. It wasn't heavily armed, just settlers, workers, families. They hadn't stood a chance. They wanted to prove a point. Marek said softly. Holt didn't answer. His fists were tight, knuckles white. They didn't want war. They wanted fear. They wanted Earth to see this and beg, but they didn't know what kind of man Holt Maddox was. "Prep the jump drive," he ordered. "We're going to Vernus." "Sir." Marek hesitated. "We've just come off a major engagement. We're low on munitions, the engine's still cooling, and half the strike crew's on oxygen rations." Holt turned, and the look in his eyes made everyone on the bridge fall silent. "Those were our people," he said. "We leave them there. We prove the Council right. I'd rather die in orbit than let them think Earth forgets it's dead." The jump to Vernus 7 wasn't clean. The Resolute's systems were frayed. The space around the planet was thick with radiation and leftover debris. But when they arrived, the sight made the crew's stomachs turn. The colony was gone. Not just destroyed, eradicated. Buildings atomized, no power, no communications, just blackened soil and scattered human remains. But that wasn't the worst part. Hovering above the wreckage was a single council ship. Small, sleek, unarmed, a recording drone. The moment it detected the Resolute, it transmitted a new message. This time, a voice. Cold, arrogant, calm. "You fight like insects. You die like insects. We will salt your worlds until your kind forgets it ever dared to stand." Holt didn't reply. He just gave the order to open fire. The drone didn't even try to run. It wanted to be destroyed. That was the point. Holt watched the explosion without blinking, then turned to the crew. "We're done waiting. We go on the offensive. The Council wants war. Let's take it to their doorstep." Marek frowned. "You want to attack Council space? I want to find whoever's leading this purge, and I want to rip his fucking heart out." The mission was suicidal. Even Earth's best ships wouldn't last long in the inner sectors of Council space. But Holt had a secret. Something even Marek didn't know. 2 weeks ago, just before the Council's first message, Earth had intercepted a transmission, an encrypted code containing coordinates deep in Council territory. It had taken Earth's best cryptologists to crack it. It wasn't just a fleet command center. It was a name. Archon Relon Voss, the one commanding the purge, a warlord in all but title, a council general who had slaughtered 9 species before breakfast. And now he had decided humanity was next. Holt remembered his father's voice the day before he died. "If they ever come for us, Don't wait for mercy. Don't wait for approval. Strike first, strike hard, and never let them think you're afraid. The Resolute began prepping for the long jump. This wouldn't be a rescue. It wouldn't even be a mission. It was retribution. And by the time Holt Maddox was done, the Council would understand something they'd never believed before. Earth doesn't lose. Earth remembers. And Earth gets even. The jump to Council space wasn't smooth. The Resolute wasn't built for deep strikes into hostile territory. Its engines groaned with every pulse of subspace. Shields flickered against the sheer gravitational stress. Some decks lost power mid-jump. A few crew members had seizures from the spatial bleed. But none of them complained. They all knew where they were going. And they knew what they were doing. This wasn't a sanctioned op. Earth Command hadn't approved it. No allies, no reinforcements. Just a single war-torn ship plunging into the heart of enemy civilization to assassinate one of the Council's top warlords. Suicide? Maybe. But Commander Holt Maddox had never cared about the odds. And now, standing at the war table in the dim glow of the Resolute's command deck, he stared at the tactical layout of Archon Rellan Voss's command world, Krelis Prime, and felt nothing but cold focus. "Planetary shields?" he asked, voice low. "Rotating tri-phase field, cycling every 47 seconds. Marek said. "They'll see us coming the second we drop out of subspace. Council scanners are layered across the outer orbit. No cloaking tech we've got can slip past it." Holt nodded. "Then we don't slip. We break through." The crew stared. A few exchanged glances. One of the younger comms officers muttered under his breath. "You want to ram a Council war world head-on?" "No," Holt said, eyes locked on the data stream. "I want to burn a hole in it." It was madness, a full frontal assault with one ship against a heavily defended capital. The kind of thing legends were made of, and martyrs. But Holt wasn't going in blind. He had a plan. During the cleanup at Vernus 7, they'd recovered something from the wreckage. Something the Council had accidentally left behind. A pulse core, alien tech, experimental, designed for planetary disruption. It emitted a hyper-frequency burst that temporarily destabilized local energy grids, including shield matrices. It had a range of only 20 kilometers and a duration of 30 seconds. But it was enough. "Drop us just outside the inner orbit," Holt ordered. "Send the stealth drones ahead. When they get close, detonate the core. As soon as that shield flickers, we go in hot and fast." Marek's jaw tightened. "We're putting everything on a 30-second window." "That's 29 more seconds than I need." And just like that, the plan was in motion. The Resolute came out of subspace in a blaze, metal screaming as the jump drive cooled. The planet loomed before them, a fortress wrapped in light, surrounded by orbital rings, weapons satellites, and Council dreadnoughts. "Drones away," Marek reported. "Core charging." The seconds crawled. Council defense systems locked on. Red warnings flashed. Interceptor squadrons launched from the planetary rings. And then, pulse detonation. A flash like a second sun lit up the dark side of the planet. Every shield across the grid flickered, dimmed, and dropped to zero. "Now!" Holt barked. The Resolute surged forward like a demon let loose. Cannons roared. Missiles screamed. They punched through the upper orbit before the Council even knew what hit them. Defense towers collapsed. Fighters spun out in flames. In the chaos, Holt targeted the main command citadel, a spire of black metal and glowing veins, pulsing with power. The seat of Archon Voss, the bastard responsible for Vernus. For the message. For every man, woman, and child torn to pieces under the Council's boots. "Bring us down," Holt growled. "I want that tower gone." Marek hesitated. "We'll be within atmosphere. If we hit it, we might not make it out." Holt's voice was steel. "Then we die doing something that matters." The Resolute dove like a burning lance, dodging fire and raking the spire with everything it had. Explosions shattered the skyline. Defense mechs burst from the ground, unloading hell. But Holt didn't slow. He took them head-on. They reached the base of the spire. Holt stood, unstrapped himself from the command seat, and looked at Marek. "You're in charge now." "Sir." Holt grabbed his rifle, strapped on his armor, and walked to the drop bay. "I'm going in." "You're insane." "No," Holt said. "I'm angry." The drop door opened, and Holt Maddox leapt into the fire. The air hit him like a hammer. Heat, smoke, screams from burning steel. Alarms wailed across the sky as Holt dropped through the chaos, flak rounds tearing past his armor like angry hornets. Council turrets tracked him, but the smoke and falling debris gave just enough cover to thread through the gaps. He slammed into the ground hard, knees buckling but not breaking. Behind him, the Resolute climbed, engines screeching from stress, bleeding fire across the atmosphere. Holt didn't look back. He didn't need to. He'd brought Earth's fury to their doorstep. Now it was time to finish the job on foot. The citadel towered above him. A jagged black monolith, spiked with crystalline veins, and wrapped in shield conductors now flickering like dying nerves. At the top, somewhere above the clouds and wreckage, was Archon Rellan Voss, the Council Butcher. The one behind Vernus, behind the slaughter, behind the smug threat Earth had turned into war. And Holt was here to end him. He ran. Bullets screamed past. 2 drones dropped from the smoke, thin like knives with wings, aiming plasma shots. Holt rolled, planted his knee, and blew one out of the sky with a concussive grenade. The other veered. He grabbed it mid-flight, crushed the wing with brute force, and used it as a shield against the next wave of fire from a rooftop sentry. Humans adapt, he thought bitterly. That's what they never understood. We don't just fight. We improvise. At the Citadel's base, he found a breach where a council cruiser had crashed through the outer wall. Fire poured from the wreckage. Bodies, alien and human alike, scattered through the rubble. Holt stepped over a dead council enforcer, grabbed its plasma rifle, and kept moving. Every corridor was carnage. Red warning lights spun, and alien voices crackled over failing intercoms. They were panicking. Good. Halfway up the tower, he ran into resistance, a squad of elite council guards, clad in obsidian armor, eyes glowing. They didn't speak, just raised their weapons in unison. Holt didn't wait. He kicked a downed fuel cell into the middle of the squad and opened fire. The explosion tore the corridor in half. The blast wave knocked Holt into a wall, cracked a rib, maybe 2, but he got up, always forward. There was no backup coming, no extraction. This was a one-way path. He reached the elevator shaft, already sabotaged, but the cables still hung. Holt wrapped his arm around one, dug in his climbing clamps, and began the long vertical crawl. His muscles burned. Smoke seared his lungs, but the fire in his chest outmatched it all. Near the top, he heard footsteps. Heavy, mechanical. They weren't running away from him. They were coming for him. Something dropped from above, landing hard on a platform 5 meters up. It wasn't council infantry. It was something worse. A juggernaut, a cybernetic titan, half synthetic, half living mass, bred for one purpose: kill whatever the council pointed at. Holt barely dodged the first swipe. The steel claws carved into the wall like it was paper. The thing was fast, too fast for its size. It charged again. Holt jumped, grabbed the cable above, and swung just as the monster slammed through the platform where he'd been. Adapt, move, survive. He came down behind it and jammed the stolen plasma rifle into its spine. Pulled the trigger. It screeched, flailed, spun. Holt ducked low and grabbed a detonation charge from his belt. "You're big," he grunted, "but you bleed like anything else." He slapped the charge on its core and leapt. The explosion tore the beast in half. Holt slammed into the upper level hard. His visor cracked, armor plate fractured, but he was still breathing. At the top of the spire, the hallway stretched out, cold and pristine, and at the end stood Relon Voss. Tall, regal, clad in ceremonial armor of silver and black, his 4 arms folded across his chest, face unreadable, eyes glowing with alien arrogance. "So," the Archon said, voice calm, "the insect crawls to the throne." Holt raised his rifle. "I'm not here to talk." "You misunderstand," Voss replied, stepping forward. "I've wanted this, to see what the great earth beast would do when cornered. Will you fight me hand to hand like your primitives do? Or will you scream and die like the rest of your species?" Holt lowered the rifle. Not because he was afraid, but because this was personal. He dropped the gun and charged. Holt's boots thundered across the cold obsidian floor. Relon Voss didn't move. He just watched, calm as a god waiting for a storm to pass. The arrogance in his expression wasn't new. Holt had seen it before, in every council diplomat who talked down to Earth, every so-called observer who treated humans like curious, dirty animals pretending to be civilized. But Voss wasn't just another politician. He was a butcher in armor, and now Holt was going to rip him apart. They collided in a roar of flesh and steel. Voss moved faster than Holt expected, not graceful, but brutal, precise. 4 arms, all deadly. The first punch caught Holt square in the ribs, and the pain was instant. One of them snapped, maybe more. Holt staggered but didn't fall. He retaliated with a hook to the side of Voss's jaw, felt something crunch beneath the gauntlet. Voss stepped back, licking black blood from his split lip. "You strike harder than your species should," he said, almost amused. "It won't save you." "Not here to be saved," Holt spat. "Just here to finish what you started." The next clash was a blur. Fists, elbows, bones cracking. Holt slammed Voss against the wall. Voss twisted and broke free, jabbing a blade from his wrist directly into Holt's side. Blood poured hot. Holt roared and slammed his forehead into Voss's face, shattering one of the alien's eye implants. They both dropped. Both bleeding. Both breathing like dying animals. But Holt pushed himself up first. That's what humans did. They didn't win because they were stronger or smarter. They won because they got up when everything said they shouldn't. Voss rose, wobbling slightly. "You think killing me changes anything?" He growled. "The council will bury your kind in stars. You will burn, forgotten." "No," Holt said, voice low. "We're not fighting to be remembered. We're fighting because you gave us no choice." And then he drew the blade, a relic from Earth's earliest space conflicts. No tech, no tricks, just steel, sharpened over time and rage. Holt had carried it since the day his father died. He'd never used it until now. He drove it into Voss's gut. The Archon's eyes widened. Holt twisted. "I saw what you did at Vernus," he whispered. "Children, families. You thought we'd beg after that. You thought we'd kneel, but you forgot something." He pulled the blade free and slashed across the alien's neck. "We don't kneel." Voss fell. The blood pooled fast, slick across the floor. Holt stood over the corpse, shaking, bleeding, barely staying upright. His armor was cracked, his lungs wheezed, vision blurred, but it was done. He activated his wristcom, static cutting in. "Target neutralized," he said, voice hoarse. "Repeat, Archon Relon Voss is down." For a moment there was only silence. Then Marek's voice, broken with disbelief. "Copy that! Jesus, Commander! You actually did it!" "Get me out of here," Holt said. "Or what's left of me." Above the planet, the Resolute fought to punch back through the defense grid. Its hull was in pieces, but she was still flying. Because, like her commander, she didn't know when to quit. Evac came in hot. A tactical shuttle burst through the Citadel's roof, barely avoiding AA fire. Holt limped aboard, collapsing just inside the hatch as the doors slammed shut. The medtech reached for him, but he waved her off. He looked down at the blood on his hands. Some of it his, some of it Voss's, and none of it innocent. "You okay, sir?" Marek asked from the cockpit, flying them out of hell. "No," Holt said quietly, "but Earth is." They didn't even wait a week. 3 days after Holt assassinated Archon Relon Voss on Kralis Prime, the Council declared open war. No more veiled threats, no more diplomacy, no more corrective measures. This was a full-scale extermination campaign. They called it the Culling. It started at the outer colonies. Council dreadnoughts emerged from subspace like gods of death. No announcements, no negotiations, just destruction. Firestorms that boiled oceans, kinetic strikes that turned cities to dust. Earth's people didn't just die, they were erased, blotted out like vermin. On the Resolute, still barely holding together after the Kralis raid, Holt stood at the edge of the command deck, hands behind his back, watching the data stream flood in. 22 colonies gone, millions dead, all because he'd gutted one warlord with a blade and a grudge. And he didn't regret a damn second of it. "Any word from the United Defense Council?" Holt asked, his voice low and rough. Marek shook his head. "They're fractured. Too many factions pulling in opposite directions. Half want to surrender. The other half are arguing about who to blame." "Typical. You think we broke something we can't fix?" Marek asked. "No," Holt replied. "I think we woke something we should have destroyed a long time ago." He turned away from the display and stared at the crew. What was left of them? Veterans with haunted eyes, fresh recruits already scarred. No speeches, no morale boosts, just one grim truth hanging in the air. This wasn't a battle anymore. This was extinction. Earth's last shot was Project Revenant, a black file program buried under 1,000 layers of classified clearance. Holt hadn't even believed it was real until now, but desperate men dig deep, and what they found was madness. Not a weapon, a person, or rather what used to be one. Call sign, Revenant, codename from another war, another failure, a genetically reconditioned human created during Earth's first contact panic decades ago, supposedly too unstable, too violent, too broken to control. He had been buried alive in cryo beneath a facility in northern Siberia, locked away after ripping apart his own command squad in a training op gone wrong. Earth had deemed him too dangerous. But now Earth needed monsters. Holt flew to the facility himself. When they cracked open the cryo chamber, the air turned to frost. Inside was a man, tall, scarred, eyes shut tight in frozen rage. Tubes in his neck. Burn marks along his chest. A war machine made of pain and science and vengeance. Holt stared at him and said 4 words, "Time to wake up." An hour later, the man stood. Didn't speak, didn't ask why. Just looked at Holt with a calm, empty stare. "What's your name?" Marek asked. He didn't answer. Holt just smiled. His name's whatever the Council screams before they die. They outfitted him fast. Battle armor fused with neural feedback mesh, weaponry designed for city clearing. They didn't bother with orders or protocol. They gave him targets. And he delivered. The first deployment was on Outpost Helix, a research colony under siege. Council forces had swarmed the perimeter. No one expected to survive. They dropped Revenant in alone. He didn't just hold the line, he turned the planet red. One by one, Council forward operations fell. Wherever he went, ships exploded. Screams filled the comms. They tried to nuke the field to kill him. Didn't work. They sent assassins. He tore their ships apart mid-flight. The Council began calling him the Red Ghost. To Earth, he was just a reminder, a symbol, that the game had changed. And Holt made sure they understood, publicly. Broadcasted Revenant's kill feed across every frequency in Council space. Played footage of Voss's corpse on repeat. Let every species, every system, every ruler know Earth wasn't dying. Earth was evolving, and Earth was coming. The sky burned, Council fleets poured into the solar system like a tidal wave of metal and fury, hundreds of ships blotting out the stars. Dreadnoughts, carriers, biological war beasts swimming through vacuum. They came with one purpose: erase Earth. And Earth? Earth didn't run. From orbit to ground, every defense system lit up. Railguns thundered from orbital platforms. Planetary cannons belched fire. Missile silos cracked open across every continent. For once, humanity wasn't fighting each other. They were fighting to exist. Holt stood atop Earth's last command center, buried beneath what used to be Nevada, now just a cratered husk. The control room was stripped down, functional. No ceremony, no comfort, just weapons, screens, the smell of sweat and scorched metal, and the silent presence of the Revenant at his side. He hadn't spoken once since they thawed him out. He didn't need to. His body said enough. Scars on top of scars, armor that fused with skin, a stare that made most men flinch. And the Council? They feared him now. Every major broadcast across the enemy's channels screamed warnings. The Red Ghost is Earth's weapon of genocide. Kill on sight. Do not engage alone. Some even claimed he wasn't human anymore. Maybe he wasn't. Maybe that was the point. Status? Holt asked. Marek's voice crackled through the command feed. Main fleet's punching through. We've lost the Martian shield net. They're heading straight for Earth. How long? 10 minutes, maybe less. Holt looked to the Revenant. You ready? Still no words, just a nod. Holt turned back to the crew. This is it, he said, voice low and hard. We hold them here, right here, because there's nowhere left to fall back to. And if they take this rock, it won't be Earth they conquer. It'll be what we were, our history, our defiance, our legacy. He paused, watching his battered crew, soldiers, engineers, hackers, even conscripted farmers. Some barely old enough to shave, all of them ready to die. We are the last breath of humanity, Holt said. Let's make it loud. The enemy came down like a hammer. Shuttles screamed through the sky. Alien war machines dropped into cities, torching everything in their path. Biotanks with shrieking limbs tore through steel and bone. But Earth didn't retreat. Earth met them head-on. The Revenant was first into the field. He landed in the middle of a burning city and went to work. One against hundreds, he moved like smoke and thunder, tearing through hulls with his bare hands, ripping pilots from cockpits, turning Council shock troops into meat. They threw everything at him. Orbital strikes, EMPs, nerve agents. He didn't stop. He couldn't stop, because he wasn't built to stop. From the command center, Holt coordinated strikes, fed intel to strike teams, ordered kamikaze runs when necessary. His voice became the pulse of the war, calm, cold, unbreakable. And slowly, the line held. Then something shifted. A massive ship appeared, bigger than anything they'd seen. Not a dreadnought, a planet cracker, a weapon the Council had used only once before against an unarmed species that dared rebel. It didn't invade. It erased, turned worlds to ash. The command room went silent. Marek whispered, "Sir, we can't stop that." Holt stared at the display, watched as the massive machine charged, its core humming, lights flashing. Then he looked to Revenant. And finally the monster spoke. "Take me there." They didn't ask how. They didn't argue. Holt nodded. "We'll get you close." An old prototype stealth shuttle was pulled from a sub-level, cobbled together, barely airworthy, but fast and quiet. Revenant climbed aboard without hesitation. Holt stood at the hatch, hand resting on the frame. "Do you know what you're walking into?" he asked. The Revenant just looked at him, eyes dead calm. "I was made for this." And then he was gone. They tracked his shuttle as it slipped through the chaos, dodging fire, weaving through wreckage. It reached the planet cracker, docked silently, vanished inside. For 10 long minutes, nothing. Then the core started to overload. No explosions, no broadcasts, just a slow, rumbling meltdown from the inside out. Holt stood silently, hands clenched behind his back. The Council flagship began to tremble. Then it detonated in orbit, a bloom of fire that outshone the sun for a full 7 seconds. The wave crippled half the enemy fleet, and in that light, in that impossible silence, humanity won. The Council retreated. What was left of their fleet limped out of Earth's system, broken, leaderless, and terrified. They had seen something they didn't understand. Not strength, not technology, but pure, stubborn, unkillable rage. Holt watched the ashes fall, his body broken, his people bleeding, but Earth still standing. "Tell the stars," he whispered. "We're still here, and if they ever come back, Earth will be waiting."